there! Welcome to So Darn Fun. This is a channel all about clothing alterations, pattern reviews, and other fun sewing how-tos. I'm Carrie, and today we're going to work on a Mother of the Groom dress. She came in yesterday with a dilemma here. The curvature of her body is much more than the curvature the dress was made for, which is causing some gaping right here, which is never a good look. Two ways I can tackle this. Number one, there's already a dart here. And typically if the darting isn't enough in a dress, you could get the gaping right there. So taking a deeper dart might take care of that. And I did check out that option, but what drove me away from that is that taking this dart in created more show right here. And that is not a look that we want. So another way to kind of approach that is also to take a look at the shoulder. It just so happens that I think the shoulders on this dress were built a little bit more squarely rather than having a soft slope. So that's creating excess down here and extra up here. When I pin this in like this, it nearly eliminates this. My client was happy with that look. So this is how we're going to tackle it. We have to take it up all the way to the neck edge because it's such a severe angle that there's just not enough to taper out smoothly to get back to the original seam up at the neck edge. So we're going to take up the whole neck edge. One thing I needed to check for was to make sure that she still had enough mobility in her arm, and she did. She tested it out, all the positions that she would be in, dance position, etc. And there's still enough room in her arm hole for her movement, which is great. Also, the dress did not come up too high on her neck when this was taken up here. So those are two things that you need to check for if this is something that you think you're going to try to tackle. Also, normally I would remove the whole sleeve and reset it in, but because we're taking up so much, the sleeve, which is not gathered, so there's not a whole lot of room in there, would come farther down in the front and back, and I think that might bother her mobility a little bit. And because she doesn't have to match anybody else in the bridal party, we're going to take some little gathers in the top instead. So I don't have to take out the entire sleeve, just the top portion. We're going to add some gathers and put it back together. Now, this is not an alteration that is only for formal dress. Anything that might have these kind of issues, you can tackle in the exact same way. But today, since I have this formal dress here in the studio, I'm going to demonstrate it on this formal. It looks to me, there's no lining or anything, so it looks pretty straightforward, pretty easy. So it's going to be maybe a simpler version of other things that you might run into, other ones that might have lining. You're just going to have to kind of reverse engineer that, but it's the same process. So let's get to it. I'll see you at the table. Okay, here you can see the sleeve of the dress. This is the left sleeve. Here's the shoulder seam. Here's the sleeve seam. I want the gathering along the top of the sleeve to spread out over 3 inches. So that means from either side of where I have pinned, I need to pluck out 1.5 inches farther beyond each pin. So here's what the serging looks like. I will call this is the right side of the serging. This is the wrong side of the serging. Typically, I would have expected to see another thread sewn in right along here, right here. There's one down here. That's a needle thread. Usually there's one here too. But I see this seam they've got sewn with a serger just to finish the seams. And then there's a straight stitch machine that's in here. So we've got to pluck out the serging as well as the straight stitch. So I'm going to kind of look at where my pin is right here and then start way over here. And this is how we pluck out serging. I'll try to put a diagram in the corner here so you can see a good example, a clear example of what threads you're looking for to pluck out. This one is easy to see because you see these horizontal stitches. That's the needle thread. That's what we want to break right there. Let's break one. And then you can slide it out. Sometimes you have to go one by one, but sometimes you can skip it. Skip one and do one and just try and see how many you can skip and still slide that thread out. And if it breaks, it's okay. Just start over. Your whole idea is to pull that thread out, slide it out, and if you have 2 threads, do it to both of them, because once you've got them both out, look what happens. The serging just peels right off. So easy. Okay, you got the idea. Once that's out, pluck out any straight stitching that you see. You want to release those layers, of course, so that you can open up this entire seam. I need to go about 1.5 inches this way. I'll just go ahead and break the stitching there and work back this way. I'll get back when I have this plucked out. I have this unstitched. Here's the sleeve over here. Here's the shoulder here. Now I need to take a look at this neck edge here. First of all, this hanging loop, yeah, let's take that off. That's just gonna flop around and get in the way, and we can just put that on later. Not all dresses will have the hanging loop attached right here. If this was my own personal dress, I'd probably just cut this thing off. But being that it's for a client, gotta do it nicely. Okay, it's on. Now, here's the neck binding on this particular dress. I could either just do this, but I won't. I will pluck this out. It's attached like this, like a bias tape, like a double fold bias tape, except it's made out of netting. And then once they stitched it on, then they just folded it to the inside and then top stitched all the way through. Okay, you get the idea. We are taking this binding off. You probably will have something different on your dress. Or you might want to approach this differently and make it easy and just sew it in like this. Since I have to take so much in, feasibly I could do that and just stitch down here and then just trim this off and open up the seam allowance. But I don't do that for clients. For myself, I might. But I try to make it look as factory as possible when I give it back. It is like a double fold bias tape. See how this edge is folded in, this edge is folded in, and then it's folded in half and just sandwiched the edge right there. That's kind of cool. Stitched down here and then folded over and then stitched all the way through. That is really cool. Okay. So my next step, and I'll do this for both sides, but I won't show both sides. This is the shoulder seam. Remember the pins I had right there? They're still there. Here's my sleeve now up here. Here's my neck edge down here. And my shoulder seam is ready to take in. So I'm going to mark, this is a pretty massive take in for this dress. I need to mark evenly on each side of this shoulder seam. You know, if I have the pins on one side unequal to the pin on the other side, I'll measure the entire distance and then divide it in two so that it's even, basically, evenly dispersed. And then I'll stitch this line right here. This has serged edges that are finished off here. I will serge mine after I sew this seam right here. So there's something that I've come upon that I want to show you here. First, let me say this is looking upside down toward the camera. Here is the shoulder seam. Here's the sleeve that I have unattached from this top portion. Again, this is upside down. And because I'm taking this in so much at the shoulder seam, just because of the natural curvature of the front and the back and how they fit together, you will see that my front piece does not align exactly with my back piece, which is the back piece is toward my ironing board here. It falls short. And I might be tempted to go, okay, do I line up this edge? Do I line up this edge? Do I put it in the middle? This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to line up the neck edge because the neck edge is probably most important to keep where it's at, so I don't have to mess with this little piece of binding I've taken off here. The armhole edge is going to be easier to kind of trim off and shave so that it will look nice when I fit this sleeve back in. So I'm pinning my line here. You see I've got my chalk line marked, and I am pinning this so that I can make sure that my neck edge is the edge that's going to line up together. My armhole edge is not going to be even, and I will just trim that to fit after I've got it stitched. I've switched my pins around so that they face the other way, so it'll be easier to go through the machine and pull them out at the same time. So I'll go ahead and stitch this shoulder seam. I just wanted to trim off that bulk of extra so that I will have room to serge these open here. So now let's head to the serger. Remember this little piece of binding that goes on the neck edge? Now that we've got this shoulder seam sewn, what do we do with this? Well, this is the neck edge, and I took it in 1 inch, actually 2 inches total because it was so much, but 1 inch this way. So let's do the same to this little piece of binding. We're going to unfold it, and I know it's really delicate. We're just going to unfold it here. And fold it right sides together. And we're going to do the same measurement that we did along the neck edge. So I'm going to measure in 1 inch and stitch a line. Okay, I have it marked. I've got the pin right along the line I'm going to sew. Now let's go for it. I can press that open, and then we'll refold it like it originally was. So let's go over to the ironing board and do a little bit of pressing. First, let's press that shoulder seam open. Now, here's the binding we just sewed together. Now it's all wanting to just fold in on itself. It's going to be a little bit tricky here. So we're just going to kind of finger press that open. If I pluck out more here and more here, then it'll give me more room to work with. Maybe I'll do that. I'll just pluck out a little bit more. Let's see if we can get a little bit of press on that. Careful with your fingers. To see, but fold it in half and then fold the sides in. And it might not be real pretty, but basically what we want is to simulate a double fold bias where we can sandwich this around the neck edge to finish it off. Doesn't have to be beautiful, it just has to work, right? There. There. That'll work. See? Some strings. Ignore the strings, but hey, that'll fold in. We'll sandwich the neck edge like this. Stitch it here, then fold it to the inside and top stitch it along here. That'll be perfect. Well, let's just finish that before we hit the shoulder gathering. Yeah, so it looks good. Now we flip it one more to the inside, and that will finish off this outside. That looks good. So the rule of thumb for gathering women's garments when you have gatherings on a shoulder or around the waist is a 1.5 to 1 or 2 to 1 ratio. And if I have about 4 inches of fabric that needs to be gathered, I can fit that appropriately into about a 3-inch area. This is just roughly, just trying to make the numbers a little bit easy to work with. So I think what I want to do is make sure that I have 1.5 inches on either side of this shoulder seam that is for gathering. So I need to pluck out a little bit more on this side, and then I'm going to have 3 inches total for which to gather all this fullness into. So first of all, see this unevenness. This is bothering me. So I'm going to eyeball it, and I'm just going to kind of trim off that little corner right there. There. That's better. And I will pluck out some along here so that I have 1.5 inches. Now for my 2 rows of gathering, I have my machine stitch length set to 4.5. I normally would set it to a higher number, except this is so fine that it's going to gather really easily. So let's run those rows of stitching first. The first row will be within the seam allowance here, the part that won't show. So let's get a row in there. As far as possible to here where the sleeve is actually sewn on without actually catching the sleeve. Let's do that. Leave long strings here. Now let's go in and do the other row, which actually would be showing if we don't end up pulling it out, which we will end up pulling it out. So it's going to be on this side of where the sleeve will be stitched. So we'll just pick a point kind of close, but maybe about 1/4 inch away from the other line that we sewed. Maybe just a little closer. Okay, we have our 2 lines of stitching. Bobbin threads pull easier than the needle thread. So find your 2 bobbin threads on one side and just start pulling them a little bit. Nice gathers. Oftentimes on the other side. I tie them off, otherwise I can pull them out. I'm just gonna tie an overhand knot here. Nothing fancy, I just don't want them to pull out. Okay, nice little gathers. Let's turn it right sides together so we can see if it's matching up yet. Almost. Let's pull a little bit more. All right, that works right there. Let's even out those gathers. Spread them out. Now I'm going to tie this end too because I don't want it to be tempted to loosen up. All right, now I know it won't come out. I've just got one pin in there. Let's go ahead and sew that. Let me turn my machine stitch length back to normal, which is, I'm using a 3, usually a 3.5, but right now I'm using a 3 because of the fineness of this fabric. Sometimes I think a smaller stitch length works better. That looks nice. Now let's pull out the thread, the gathering thread that we know is was going to show. And remember, we tied them together, so we'll have to break the thread somewhere. And tie them together at the end here. Well, it would be easier if I used this side here, the bobbin thread. Yeah, there we go. Oh, that's gonna be cute. Okay. There's more. Let's go serge it. When I serge something, I hide these tails with a needle that looks like this by running it into some existing serging, and then I thread it through the needle and pull it through, and then kind of clip off the extra, and it hides it so nicely. It makes it look nice. See, you can't tell. If you don't have a serger, do not fret. Everything that I've done with a serger here, you can do with a zigzag. Or sometimes it doesn't even need to be finished at all. But rest assured, you do not need to have a serger to do this. This is just a nice finish that those of us who do have sergers can use. So there, now those are nice and hidden. All right, you sewing diehards, now we can see a comparison of the shoulder that we have finished right here and the one that is partially unattached, oops, sorry about the blur, and not finished on this side. You can see the lift on the shoulder, how it is too broad, even for my dress form. The nice little sleeve on the right side that we've just finished with the little gathers on top is going to be perfect for this mother of the groom. Let me turn the dress form so you can see what it looks like from the side. And there we see the shoulder, the top of the shoulder. Very cute. I do have other alterations to make to this dress, such as taking in the side seams, but that is not something we are covering today. So now I get to tackle the other sleeve, which I will not show. Then when it's all done, I will show you the finished product. And here we have the final product with both sleeves finally finished. I've also tapered in the waist and hemmed the underlayer. And I think that tomorrow when my client picks up, she's going to be over the moon with how well this is going to fit her. At least I will cross my fingers and hope for that. I trust that you gained something valuable from today's project, and I hope that you'll join me in the future. Be sure to click like and subscribe. I would be honored for you to join me in the future. Thank you, and have a great day.